Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. I have Chloe with me today, who is an alternative provision lead, but we're going to talk about what goes on behind the data, why we do what we do as school staff, what brings us joy, what is the bit that fulfills us, and we might challenge some of the current rhetoric around education. Let's see where this goes. So Chloe, welcome. Do you want to tell everyone a bit about you?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So this is my first podcast. I'm very excited. A little bit about me. I had an accidental but wonderful start in the LinkedIn world at the end of the summer holidays. I posted a piece about being the real gatekeeper and realised there were hundreds, if not thousands, of real gatekeepers across the system, which was heartwarming and restorative for me, certainly in terms of my view of what was going on. The sentiment being that there's so many things we don't measure in education or can't measure in education. So it was kind of all of those things that happened behind the measures and the metrics and the data and the statistics that we put in front of people, which ultimately comes down to relationships and belonging and community, building trust, and actually making the system better for everyone within it. Off the back of that piece, getting wonderful responses from LinkedIn, I've just continued to talk a lot about belonging and community and what that looks like, what inclusion really is, which isn't a buzzword, what belonging really looks like and feels like, how people create it, how people go out of their way to do that, whether it's wonderful people who are talking about wearing Barbie shoes on the gate so that a young person comes in, or earrings that I know one of the head teacher talked about her earrings and the children are fascinated by them. It's the head teacher who plays music on the gate, and you probably will have seen there was a wonderful video on LinkedIn where her caretaker is dancing as the children come in. Tina Farr, her name is. So for me, a lot of what people know about me has come from that. But I actually got my start when I was 17, very accidentally. My mum was in the education system, so I swore I never would be. But my own school asked me to go back when I was 17, initially as a community receptionist. They had areas that you could rent, and I loved it. And then I just made a nuisance of myself volunteering in their pastoral teams until there was a full-time position that came up. I was really lucky. It was a really family school. I learned so much from them. They trained me up in everything pastoral. And that's kind of where it's grown from there. I moved to a school in Winchester for a period of time. And then I moved back to schools in Southampton, where I'm from, which is amazing because it's always been my goal to be back here doing work in the local area. So I've really learned on the job. I haven't gone to university, I haven't done any of those things. So it is the most unusual start and journey through the system so far, but I have had wonderful mentors and leaders along the way for sure who have helped me. So I got to a point last year where I'd battled in the system for a really long time and struggled a little bit personally because of that. It took its toll, and I continued trying to battle that, and then realized I needed to slow down and press the pause button and rethink what I could do. Ultimately, the only thing that I could do was go and kind of refill my bucket and work out how I could come back into the system restored and ready to make a difference, and actually what difference I really wanted to make in it. So it's been a bit of a blessing in disguise for me, really, but that's how I've ended up here.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I guess the question that's going through my mind is how obviously you needed to reset a little bit, and I get that. I've had to do that a couple of times over the years. But how is it that you've come back into education and you have a positive outlook? You have a sort of glass half full, overflowing view of education. What is that about, do you think?
I think it was a little bit of coming back to myself. I think when I was out of the worst part of my struggle, so to speak, and I could reflect a little bit more easily and softly and gently with myself, I think I realized the part I'd lost, and perhaps the part that ultimately led to that unraveling a little bit, was that I loved education because of the heart, and I loved education because of the community and the sense of belonging that I had in it. I found in it myself, not as a child, but as an adult, and all those things that it could bring and the joy that it could bring to people and the difference that it could make. And when I really stopped and thought about it, actually, I think getting a bit lost in the data and the metrics and the measures and what everybody else thought and what everybody else's definition of success was actually one of the things that started to really kind of have a bit of conflict in me internally. So when I was able to realize that, I thought, well, those things are not lost. That's just about me resetting myself and coming back into the system and finding all those people again and coming back with that new energy and that new enthusiasm for it, but with another layer of lived experience that I can bring to it and say, no, I've been there, I get it. Like we don't have to sell out. We can be ourselves. We can do this. And actually, me not being myself, look where I ended up. So I think that's what's restored my faith a little bit. And I think being surrounded by such wonderful colleagues really brought it home for me, because I think until you will pick up on days where there's stuff like that and it's like a team coming together, and it's that sense of, you know, standing beside each other, walking beside each other. But when you really get to a crisis, I think that's when you see that actually underneath it all there's just wonderful humans trying to do wonderful work, and they're all just as lost in it as I was. And so I think now I've come back with this renewed sense of wanting to change that and make that easier and say, it's okay, I get it, I've been there too.
Can we dig into that thing of what does it look like, or what do you mean? What's the reality of being lost to yourself? What's that about?
I think for me, it's going about your day and almost hearing your own rhetoric and realizing that's not where you started and that's not what your purpose was. And I think nobody did this for me, but I think, you know, myself as a safeguarding manager, for example, I had the best of intentions and the biggest heart going into it, so much so that I could never switch off. But I was also terrified of someone coming in and saying that this measure wasn't good enough, or this metric wasn't good enough, or this data didn't look how it was supposed to look. And what that led me to do, and I caught myself once and thought, this is not what I should be asking. And I caught myself saying, what happens if I end up in a serious case review? And actually, that wasn't the question I should have been asking at all. And wouldn't it be a wonderful world if the answer to all those questions was do absolutely the right thing by the child? But actually, sometimes those two things don't line up and they don't run in parallel with each other. And the moment I kind of caught myself saying that was the moment I thought, actually, something's really changed here and something's really shifted here. And actually, I've made it about myself, because I'm focusing on what would happen. How much trouble will I get into? Who will blame me? Who will ask questions? How, you know, and actually what that did was prompt this real almost obsessiveness with not dropping a ball and being available 24/7, and, you know, relentlessly checking and refreshing my emails or whatever it might be. It was a vicious circle by that point. So I think that's what I mean in terms of losing yourself, is kind of forgetting why you're doing it to a degree, but also that sense of focusing on the wrong things. And I get it. That's not a criticism of anybody. That's self-preservation. And I think the system perpetuates that. And I think the system allows that to happen. But I now have come through that and come out the other side, I guess. And I just, we don't have those conversations enough. And I think if there were people who were having those conversations around me at the time and saying, no, I get that too, and I feel that too. Like I felt that conflict. And even now, I feel a little bit vulnerable saying, you know, I asked what would happen if I ended up in a serious case review rather than, but those things happen, and those thoughts are going through people's minds, and those conversations are taking places in in offices and classrooms and corridors across the country. And it's not wrong, but people shouldn't be feeling like that as staff who are going in only wanting to make a difference.
Absolutely. So, you know, obviously Simon Sinek's why comes
Mhm.
back. You know, I have a course out called 5 Minutes to Thrive, and it's 5 minutes at the start of every staff meeting. And one of the weeks is, do you remember your why? Because the power of remembering why we came into teaching, and actually my why started with one thing, and actually over the years it was still of course making a difference to the children, but it became a little bit more focused over
Mhm.
time, my why. You know, that moment where that pupil just goes, oh, I get it, or oh, you see me today, somebody actually cares that I'm in school. It's much more sort of micro
Yeah.
noticing, I suppose, for me, my why. But it's really interesting for me that you've managed to come back noticing this, because I think there'll be a lot of people listening to this who are going, that's absolutely me. I'm constantly checking my emails because I'm worried if A happens or B happens, and actually it's going away from the child focused, child centered, the reason that we're doing it all. How have you managed to adjust your thinking, if you like?
I've been on a real journey with myself, and there will be probably colleagues watching this who know how relentless I was in the pursuit of, checking my phone or getting my phone home without anybody noticing, because I just got so kind of caught up in that narrative of, well, if I don't keep an eye out, who's going to? So coming out the other side of that has been a real journey, and it has not been a seamless journey at all, and I've had to do a lot of work on myself, with the help of friends, with the help of family, with the help of counselling and that kind of stuff, to try and unravel some of that stuff. But I think now what I realize is that actually what I did was take myself away from being able to do any good. So ultimately that was the turning point for me, when I realized that actually, what am I doing now? I'm off. I'm unwell. I'm not actually able to make a difference. I'm not even able to keep myself safe, never mind keep other children safe. And actually that was my why. That was the reason I got out of bed in the morning. It was my sense of purpose. It's the thing that I wanted to do most in the whole world. And by doing all of those things, I took myself out of the game altogether. I couldn't affect any change because I wasn't there. I wasn't able to function. I wasn't able to focus on the things that mattered. And so that was really the turning point, when I connected the fact that actually what I was doing was not helping anyone. In fact, what I was doing was taking myself completely away from a situation where I could affect change and I could make a difference and I could help. I'm sure there will still be times in my life. I know now that in times of peak stress, that is probably something I would default to, and that's probably something I will do. But so does everyone else around me, who is my support network. So that was a real turning point for me. Just realizing that I had actually just slowed everything down and got in the way of all of the things that I wanted to make better, because I hadn't pressed the pause button when I should have done, and I hadn't noticed those things quick enough.
Yeah, that's so powerful, isn't it? Because it's the taking a moment to notice. And I
Mm,
would challenge anyone listening to this right now just to pause for a moment. You could even press pause on the recording and think, am I noticing? Am I reacting through the day in a way that is positive and constructive? And is it the best thing for the child and
yeah.
for me, actually?
Mhm.
Or am I slightly on self destruct? Hello, I'm Rowena Hicks, and I'm so pleased to introduce this course to you. It's a short, practical, made to fit into your current routine course that I hope is going to help you, because I know time is precious. Staff are frazzled at the end of the day, but actually this fits into what you're doing already. So why me? Why this? Well, I burnt out after 30 years in school as a teacher, a Senko, a specialist teacher, even an advisor, and then a leader. I burnt out. I loved it. I was passionate, but I had to leave. And that just breaks my heart. Teachers are leaving and they're going off sick. This has to stop. So what I've designed is 5 minutes at the start of each staff meeting. You can give your team something small and powerful to build momentum. You'll build their confidence. You'll improve their well-being, their team dynamics, their energy. You reduce stress and overwhelm. And you're building habits to increase productivity, energy, and joy. So each week, there is a short action sheet, because really there isn't going to be any change without action, is there? But there's no extra cost. You're going to be consistently investing in time together to shift how staff feel. Are they seen? Are they valued? Are they heard? Give them a voice.
These are small microculture changes. You're going to be building your staff team and you're going to enable them to thrive. This isn't a well-being bolt-on. It's a culture shifting tool built for real schools by someone who's really walked it. So let's stop staff from leaving and let's help them to flourish and thrive in their roles.
So you came out of self-destruct
Mhm.
and now you do it differently. What is the difference? Is it things like boundaries? Is it expectations of yourself? What is it?
I think, firstly, the thing to say is I came out of self-destruct with the help of a whole army of wonderful people and colleagues, friends. I call them Team Starfish, who helped me come out of that. So it was not a solo venture by any stretch of the imagination. I think now I'm more open to challenge from them if they see those things, if they recognize those things. I think I've really reframed it in my mind, so I know that if I start to do those things again, I risk being back in that place, and in that place I couldn't help anyone. And actually, the worst feeling in the world for me in that place was not being able to help. So I don't want to be back there, firstly. But I think it's also that I've really been on a journey with my own story. I have, I guess, a more complex story of my own, and I didn't feel that I fitted into many of the rooms that I was in. And as I was growing up, it even came to the fact that, it sounds daft, but I used to watch elocution videos on YouTube to try and make sure that I sounded less like where I was from. So I went
Wow.
on, so it was my power in that it's the very reason it allowed me to connect with families and young people and colleagues and do that so seamlessly in and out of all different groups and all different places. But it was never something I talked about or was honest about because I had a great shame attached to it. And I thought it would change how people thought of me, viewed me. So this whole thing has been also a journey with that. And my friends would tell you that they've learned more about me in the last year than they have in the 33 years that they may have known me before that. So I've learned to take that purpose that I knew was there but didn't talk to anybody about, and lead with it and share it and connect on it. And that, in some strange full circle kind of way, has allowed me to feel like I don't have to keep proving something and I don't have to keep fighting something. I can just be, and I can move with my heart, and I can affect change by just being myself. And I think that has allowed me, probably even more than boundaries, although I have had to do some work on those, to start working in a different way and affecting change in a different way. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've slightly homed in on the fact that maybe because it resonates with me and my journey of you saying that you don't need to prove yourself, because over years and years I never felt I was good enough. I felt that
Mhm.
even though I knew I was good at the job, people told me I was good, but I guess I always felt that someone was going to find out that I didn't know as much as they thought I knew, or I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't good enough. And I guess there's a lot of us. I mean, I know something like over 80% of us have imposter syndrome. So, but what is that about in education and what is impact for us, do you think?
I mean, firstly, I get your point so much because I'm hopeless at taking a compliment. And again, anybody who works with me who ends up watching this will be smiling at the thought of me accepting a compliment because I just can't do it. I In education specifically, I think it's such a diverse group of people, and I think leadership looks different across so many different schools. And for me, it just became a sense of feeling a little fraudulent and feeling like I was kind of pretending or playing at being knowledgeable or able to do these things. If I'm completely honest, and I think this will speak to the support staff, but I want to be really clear, it's not. There are wonderful teachers across the country doing wonderful things. There are some who I think have quite archaic views of the system and of support staff and perpetuate this kind of sense of them and us sometimes. and that support staff are less than. And they're right, I didn't go to university, but what I bring to the table is entirely different to what they bring to the table. And as for support stuff, across all schools, but I certainly, as I grew up through the system, really felt that and felt the weight of that, and wanted desperately to avoid anybody thinking that of me. So I think that still exists, not as much perhaps as when I first started in the system, but I still think there is an element of that. I think a lot of it for me actually comes down to who I was personally rather than anything else. But again, that speaks to the fact that it doesn't necessarily feel totally safe to share your story in education, but I think that's probably true in any workplace. I don't think it's the done thing. I think it's getting there. And I think even the generations coming after me, I think, are changing that and shifting that. And there's so much more of the real human showing up in a workplace and being celebrated. And you see that on LinkedIn. But I don't think we focus on that very much. And I don't think we slow down enough in education to have those conversations and connect on that level and center ourselves back in why we're doing it together. And I think ultimately we'd all realize we're human then, rather than someone who might have a master's or might have a PhD or runs the school or cleans the school. It doesn't matter. I think perhaps we would start to untangle that web a little bit if we started to have those really frank and honest conversations with each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, I went round for so many years trying to look like I knew what I was doing because I felt that otherwise people would think I was weak.
Yeah.
But actually, I've learned that being vulnerable is human. And actually, Brené Brown's so right where she says vulnerability, is the key to courage, or something like that.
Yeah.
Is the greatest form of courage, I think she says. And that is why I do this podcast and keep doing it, because people are coming in from all different walks of school and outside school, actually, and being so vulnerable and saying, we need to talk about this more because we need teachers, we need support staff, we need all levels of leaders and everybody to stay in education, not to be leaving like they are in droves at the
Yeah.
moment because they feel unseen, they feel unvalued, they are running on empty because they're trying to be something that actually isn't sustainable. But the more honest we can be, as you say, the more hope we have that we can support each other, because a lot of it comes back, as you were saying right at the beginning, to relationships and belonging. Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that also comes from having felt that myself in the system. I think I may have touched on it slightly at the beginning, but I didn't feel that as a child at all. I hated school. I hated the education system. As I say, the thought of going back into it was laughable to me. There was no way I was going to end up following in my mum's footsteps or working in education, full stop. How times have changed. But I think I then went into it and certainly grew up in it, wanting other people to feel what I didn't. I wanted them to feel included and seen and celebrated for who they are and supported. And the systems have changed massively, even in the time since I was 15 to now, in wonderful ways. But I think we still have some way to go. But I think that's what really focused me on my why, and wanting to replicate, I guess, some of those things that I had seen in teachers who had really reached me and had really taken the time to connect with me and get to know me as a person. And I'm connected with some of them on LinkedIn now, and it's lovely for me because it's such a full circle moment. One of my old teachers, who's now a deputy head, contacted me on LinkedIn a little while ago. And I thought she hadn't realized who I was. I thought it was just off the back of my gatekeeper piece. And she's like, no, of course I knew. That's why I reached out. And it was such a lovely full circle moment for me. So I think I've taken that into education and really wanted to do that for people, and really wanted to make sure that other colleagues were doing that. And I have some of the best friends in my entire world now off the back of relationships that started in the pastoral corridors, for example, really like-minded individuals. And we really focused on all the same things, and knew that being on the gate or being on bus duty or walking down to one stop to see what was going on in the community was really where you built those those long-lasting relationships, and also created that sense of safety, which was going to pay dividends later when they needed someone and when they knew that they could come to you. So my real focus on putting that out into the world right now is to slow down that need to kind of make it fit a box, because I think that even, you know, with the Ofsted framework changing, you know, we're back to, well, how do we show that on paper? How do we show inclusion over here? How do we show belonging? How do we show staff well-being? How do, you know, and I get the need for data, I really do, but actually those things are felt. Those things are things we feel and things we can contribute by showing up with our whole hearts and being human and connecting with each other and standing beside each other, winning and losing together, you know. And I think for me, that's one of the reasons I really keep trying to kind of continue the conversation in LinkedIn whilst I have that audience, because I really believe those things and I've really benefited from those things. And the people I admire most in education or outside of it, Brené Brown is one, by the way, but they're the people who put those things front and center. And when I feel most known and most seen is when I'm going to listen as an adult, and when I'm going to engage in that conversation, and I'm going to learn the most, because that's where that magic happens. And I think if we can take the time, slow down all the box ticking, I know it's needed. I wish it wasn't. I know it is, but let's slow it down and work out how we can actually make people feel that they belong and actually build community and actually bring that heart back into the system, because the rest will follow. If we get those things right, we're not thinking about how to tick a box and what strategies to put in place. It will come.
Yeah. My goodness, I think we'll stop on that note, because that last sentence or two is exactly what it's about. And I think we would completely agree with each other that if people feel that they are seen and valued, heard, that they belong and trusted, it's all about that psychological safety and that those relationships, then they're going to thrive. And it's exactly the same for the adults as it is for the pupils. So Chloe, thank you so much. People can find you on LinkedIn,
Yes.
Chloe Fox, and we'll put the tag for that in the show notes as well. So
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for your vulnerability and your courage today, and your experience and your wisdom. So thanks, Chloe, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.